There's a trend on Instagram right now where everyone, including myself, is sharing pictures from 2016. And when I was going through my camera roll looking at my 2016 pictures, I saw that I took pictures of every single thing I cooked and none of it looked good. At the time, cooking felt like a guessing game, but with a little bit of practice and a few core recipes, I was able to hone my skills and cook really delicious food for myself and my family. And with these 10 recipes, you can do the same thing too. Okay, let's start with fluffy scrambled eggs. And we're starting here because they really teach you a lot about heat, timing, and restraint when cooking. There are two ways to make scrambled eggs, creamy and fluffy, and I am team fluffy. Creamy eggs are where you stir them the whole time you're cooking them. Fluffy is where you let them stay really still while cooking them. Here I am mixing together 4 eggs, about a quarter cup of milk, and a little adobo seasoning. You could use salt and pepper or whatever seasonings you prefer. I just really like adobo on eggs. Then I am preheating my skillet with some butter. And this is the really important part about fluffy scrambled eggs. You need a really middle ground temperature. If it's too low, the eggs will stick. If it's too high, they won't be fluffy. The timing is really important here. As soon as you see the edges of the egg start to cook and set, softly slide them to the middle of the pan and let the uncooked eggs fill in those spaces. That no stir method will yield fluffy eggs every single time. Those edges start to cook almost immediately, so you do have to pay attention to them, but practice enough restraint that you're not just swirling the eggs around in the pan, because if you do, they will become creamy, which if you want creamy eggs, that's a great option. But for fluffy eggs, just keep sliding the cooked part gently toward the middle of the pan. This is a great recipe because it only takes 5 minutes or less, and I'm always here for a fast recipe, but it also can teach us a lot about the temperature at which we cook and also to keep the ingredients simple and the process really easy. For beginners, sometimes the number one problem is overcomplicating the recipe and the process. And in the spirit of process in cooking, we need to talk about boiled eggs. Over the years, I've heard 1,000 different ways to boil an egg perfectly and to make sure it peels perfectly every single time. The only method I have found that works consistently every single time is what is called the 5-5-5 method in the Instant Pot. In my Instant Pot, I put 11 eggs. Depending on what size Instant Pot you have, you can fit more or less, and 1 cup of water. And I should also note that those eggs are on a little trivet, so that way they're not touching the bottom. Then pressure cook them on high for 5 minutes. Let it naturally release for 5 minutes, and then let them sit in an ice bath for 5 minutes. For me, this method works every single time. I've tried the whole boiling with vinegar. I've tried letting the water come to a boil, then letting them sit on the stovetop with the burner off. I've tried everything, but this is the only one, as you can see, where the shell comes off perfectly every single time. What this underscores for new home cooks, or even people who are just trying to get back to basics in their home cooking, is to find methods that are consistent and work for you every single time. So that way you don't feel like you're reinventing the wheel every single time you cook. Boiled eggs are great to keep around for snacks. My daughter eats them all of the time for lunch and also for snacks. You can throw them in salads. You can make egg salad with it. And with the 5-5-5 method in the Instant Pot, you aren't losing 3/4 of the egg white every single time you're peeling it. Recently on TikTok, someone tagged me in a post saying that they just weren't ready to bake bread yet, but they're making discard recipes. And even though I know anybody watching this video can make bread, I understand it's intimidating. So I think a great place for beginners to start is with an easier quick bread, something like tortillas or flatbreads, for example. So in this case, I am making sourdough tortillas. I am using half fresh milled kamut flour and half all-purpose flour, but you can use all-purpose if that's what you prefer. The reason why I encourage beginners to start with something like tortillas rather than, say, a sandwich bread is because tortillas, they're forgiving, but they lay the foundation, or they build the framework of what it's like to make dough, what dough should feel like, what are the ingredients. But you don't need any fancy equipment and you don't have to learn any fancy techniques, but in the end, you do have a bread product. You can get this full recipe over on my blog at moodandmagnolia.com, but in a nutshell, you're mixing together water and starter and then combining that with flour, salt, baking powder, and avocado oil. That dough needs to rest for 30 minutes, and then you knead it by hand just for 1 minute before you divide it into 16 pieces. Once you have those 16 pieces, you let them rest another 30 minutes so the gluten can relax. That just makes them easier to roll. And then you cook them for about 30 seconds on each side on a very hot skillet. Like the eggs, it's really a balance of temperature here. If it's too low, you won't get those good char marks like you want on a tortilla. If it's too high, you'll burn the whole thing. So it's really a balance here, but do err on the side of a little bit hotter than what you probably think. But you can have a homemade bread product with the simple process of mixing ingredients together, letting it rest, kneading it for 1 minute, and then cooking them for 30 seconds on each side. It doesn't get much easier than that, and it builds a lot of confidence for baking bread later. Okay, let's talk about perfect pasta, and I have a couple recipes here for you. All of these are great for busy weeknights or even if you're having just a casual gathering and want to make something easy for dinner. The secret to perfect pasta is to salt your pasta water and salt it a lot. The saying is as salty as the sea. Aim for about 2 heaping tablespoons of salt per 4 cups or per quart of water. And this makes it so your pasta is seasoned and you don't have to season the sauce as much. We'll get back to that pasta in a minute. Let's move on to a complementary recipe, which is a white wine sauce. A simple white wine sauce should be in the back pocket of every home cook. So you simply just mince up some onion or shallots and then garlic, and then you saute the onion in butter first. I used about 4 tablespoons of butter here. In recipes, it's really important to remember that you don't add the garlic until just before you add the liquid ingredients. So cook the onions, then add the garlic, because if you add the garlic too early, it will burn and turn bitter. So once you can smell the garlic, immediately pour in white wine. A little hack I have for white wine, if you're like me and you don't like to drink a lot of white wine, is to use a split of wine so you're not stuck with too much. Then take some of that salted pasta water, a ladle or 2 full, and pour it right into your sauce. The starch left over from the pasta will help thicken it, and the salt in the water will help season your sauce. Then just before your pasta is al dente, while it still has a tiny bit of that chewy bite to it, put it in that white wine sauce and let it finish cooking. The white wine sauce itself only takes about 5 minutes or so to make. It's really quick and easy, and truly the longest part of this is just waiting for the pasta to cook. But this is so simple and so delicious. It's perfect for a busy weeknight, but it's also delicious and fancy enough for a casual dinner party or gathering. In the same vein, knowing how to make a bechamel or mother sauce is really important for every home cook because it's one of the most versatile sauces you can make. To make this, start with a simple roux, which is equal parts butter and flour. So here I melted 2 tablespoons of butter and then I added 2 tablespoons of flour. Then I'm adding in 1 1/4 cup of milk. But a secret here is to warm the milk. It doesn't need to be hot, but take the chill off of it. Then all you do is you turn up the temp a little bit to medium high, whisk it continuously until it thickens, and you are done. It literally takes less than 5 minutes to make this. You can pour spaghetti sauce into it for a creamy sauce. You can throw shredded cheddar cheese for a cheese dip. I like it as is. It's totally up to you, but it is so easy. Making a whole chicken once a week will change your entire cooking game. And for beginners, and actually for everybody, what I really recommend for most nights is to make a slow cooker whole chicken. Here I have a whole chicken in a Dutch oven, and I'm putting in somewhere between 6 and 8 cups of water. It kind of depends on how big the chicken is, but just make sure the chicken's mostly covered. And I'm putting it in my slow cooker. I usually put it in before bed and let it cook overnight, but just make sure it cooks for about 8 hours on low. And now I love a roasted chicken. I like instant pot chicken, but the reason why I really like this slow cooked chicken is because you get all of the chicken meat, but you also get a broth all in one fell swoop. And then that means you have ingredients you can use for the rest of the week for other dishes. You cannot underestimate how important it is to maximize your efforts in the kitchen. If you're making something, make sure it can feed you for a few days. If you're making a chicken, spread that broth out and spread the meat out over a few recipes. Learning how to make a good soup can go a long way in the kitchen. And I know all of us can saute some vegetables and then throw some chicken broth in and call it soup. But knowing how to make a creamy soup can really up-level your cooking game. The first trick to a really delicious soup is to saute your vegetables first. This releases their natural sugars and adds more flavor to the soup. For sure, on busy days, I've skipped this part, but definitely it does taste better if you saute the vegetables first. And again, just as you would in any other recipe, add that garlic last. When it becomes aromatic, then add your liquid ingredients. For a creamy chicken soup, a really nice addition is a little bit of white wine. So I poured a little bit of white wine in there. I'd say about a half a split, and then a third of a cup of flour. Putting that flour on the vegetables and cooking it for a minute will help the soup thicken. So after it cooks for a minute or so, then I'm adding in about 8 cups of chicken broth and then letting it simmer, I'd say for about 20 minutes or so, or until those vegetables are tender. Then I'm adding in 1 pound of gnocchi. At this point, you could throw in any pre-cooked pasta that you have, a little bit of wild rice, whatever it is you want. It doesn't have to be gnocchi. And then I'm adding in 2 cups of heavy cream and stirring it together. My husband added some of the chicken from the slow cooked chicken. I actually don't really like chicken meat in my soup, so I skipped that part. But this is absolutely delicious either way, and it really elevates a standard chicken soup into something much more decadent, but without any extra effort. There's definitely something about these decadent sort of foods that feel intimidating to new home cooks, but they're actually really easy and they definitely add a lot more to your regular meal menu. And one of my favorites is a really simple cream sauce. A cream sauce uses really simple ingredients and takes less than 30 minutes to make, but it definitely has the air of something a lot fancier. To make a cream sauce, I first saute some onions until they are translucent, I'd say about 2 or 3 minutes, then add in garlic, and then I deglaze the pan with some chicken broth. Deglazing is just the process of putting a liquid in a hot skillet and then scraping up the brown bits to add flavor. Then I add in just a pinch of mustard. I don't like Dijon mustard, so I use stone ground, but you could use Dijon, that's a more classic route. And then I just add in some heavy cream. I put in this case, a little bit of gnocchi and let it cook in that sauce for a couple of minutes, some Parmesan cheese, salt, pepper, and spinach. The trick to the spinach is to turn off the heat, put the spinach in, and then stir it until it wilts. The residual heat will wilt the spinach without overcooking it. You can serve it right away if you want it really saucy, but if you let it sit for about 10 or 15 minutes, you can see it turns really creamy and delicious. You can serve it with gnocchi, pasta, it's great with grilled chicken, it's really up to you. Okay, last up on the staple recipes for home cooks is a homemade granola. And in this case, I'm making a sweet and salty sourdough granola. The reason why I think something like a granola is important for home cooks to know is because often what we just think about is dinner, the main meals that we have to make. But really, if we can make some of our condiments or some of our snacks or the things like granola that we put on top of yogurt, we really start to dive into new types of recipes and become self-sufficient in the kitchen. So it's not so much that you need to know how to make granola per se, but that you can expand beyond just meals. You can get this recipe over on my blog at moodandmagnolia.com, and in fact, most of the recipes in this video are available there. But this is a combination of sourdough starter, which acts as the binder, butter, maple syrup, and vanilla, and then the world is really your oyster from here. I use rolled oats, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, ground cinnamon, and salt. And then I mix all of that together, but you can use any combination of granola-like ingredients that you prefer. The one trick is to keep any dried fruit that you want in your granola out until after you cook it, which I'll show you in just a minute. And once that's combined, I'm just spreading it on the parchment lined sheet and then baking it at 350 for about 20 to 25 minutes or so. Your house will smell so good when you are baking this. Once it comes out, I'm adding the dried fruit and a little more salt on top. If you bake it with the dried fruit, that dried fruit will get really hard to chew. So just wait until the end. And the reason why I'm sprinkling it with salt at the end is because I want that salt to go on top, but I want to do it while it's hot. So that way, it kind of dissolves the salt, but because it's on top of the granola, you can really taste that sweet and salty flavor a little bit more. Not only is homemade granola delicious, it is a fraction of the price of the stuff you get in the store. These recipes are a great foundation for any home cook. And once these feel familiar and you're comfortable with them, you can build from there. Thanks so much for stopping by today, and I'll see you again next time.